bad, because I know some of you are excited about this announcement. Not the usual amount, by the way, because it's pretty clearly a bad idea, which I'm about to outline, because here comes the reality of business. Okay, so are Disney and Kevin Feige building a giant streaming service in the sky for MCU characters to retire to, as they are never ever going to get a movie, right? Oh, talk about a bunch of cold water thrown in the face of your career, right? Now, Loki, he has kind of worn out his welcome on the big screen, right? And I saw a number of you be like, but isn't Loki dead, Grace? How could he have a series? Please, Loki's died so many times in the comics, whatever. I mean, as soon as he died in Infinity War, I was like, I can't wait to see how he comes back. And apparently he's going to come back. He's going to come back. Wow, what a surprise for Tom Hiddleston. He's going to come back, not as a woman or as a kid, but it's like double-edged sword. It's like, you get to come back to the role, Tom Hiddleston, but on the small screen. He's like, oh, I never should have given that night manager speech, acceptance speech. Some of you were like, oh, he's an award winner, Tom Hiddleston. He's doing great. He won a Golden Globe for the night manager, but then he made such a horrible tone-deaf speech that it kind of ruined his career. All right, so anyway, Scarlet Witch, though, never really even got started in the movies, and many of us were hoping to see her in a potential Doctor Strange sequel. So disappointed and devastated fans is just one potential casualty if Disney moves ahead with this plan. By the way, Scarlett Johansson, you might want to check your contract for that Black Widow movie, because it kind of seems like a prime candidate for Disney streaming, don't you think? Right? We were all like, could that really do well at the box office? And now I'm like, I see a Disney streaming movie. Her head's just gonna explode. She's already had to wait so long. And if this is what she ends up getting, it would make sense. Like, I would understand that, but wow. I mean, I'm kind of done with the character, and I think Scarlett Johansson is, playing it, more for herself than for the fans these days. So I wouldn't be too upset about it, but she sure would be. All right, but let's back it up. What's the announcement? So for those of you who didn't hear the details, I'm sure you've seen the headline. Disney is going to produce MCU-related streaming shows that feature both big screen characters like Loki and Scarlet Witch that are being identified as second tier. As I said, ouch, right? I keep telling you, Hollywood is a very tough business. And also, to those of you who are like, oh, this is a great honor to get a streaming show, you can see that even within Disney and Marvel, these characters are, they've been labeled second tier. So I'm telling you, TV is not a reward. The smaller screen is not a reward once you've been to the big screen. It's going backwards, okay? Also, apparently they'll showcase some other new superheroes as well, characters we haven't seen yet. Boy, I hope this doesn't mean Monica Rambeau is going to get stuck here. Oh, wow. But, I mean, the disappointment, I think, from fans of seeing some characters getting demoted to the smaller screen will be palpable. And I think that's very dangerous. That right there is enough of a reason not to do this. So anyway, these shows will be 6 to 8 episodes long. That's a good length. Overseen by Feige, right? And although also the more opportunities Feige gives himself to fail or mess up, he's going to end his winning streak. That's also risky. And also, they apparently will have a movie-level budget. No word if that means a blockbuster budget. Some of you are saying, oh, it's the same level as the movies, right? But come on, all right, so some of you might say, well, to prove that point, Grace, isn't Disney spending $100 million on its Star Wars streaming show? They are, but that's just one show. And by the way, side note, I think the Star Wars show is a good idea because, again, it's just one show, and there's so much drama and division in the movies lately that I think a popular Star Wars streaming show could either reunite the fans or at the very least bring back into the fold the fans who are currently upset and boycotting. Those solo numbers are low. Wow. Now, this is going to be, though, a bunch of MCU shows, so they can't all have a $100 million budget. You're going to have some division of that, right? Also, one of you tweeted me, and I thought this was a good point, that this could potentially be a great opportunity to hire new talent behind the camera and in front of the camera. And I thought that would be really nice. That would be a nice element to this. But I don't think it's going to happen because they're spending so much money here and the MCU brand is at stake that I would suspect that they will end up hiring experienced TV talent and indie film talent for these shows, just like they do with Marvel Netflix shows. You see who gets hired there as well. And we'll circle back to Marvel Netflix in just a minute. Now, but the first thing I want to say, though, before we get to that, is that if these were animated and like 2D Disney animated with the original talent doing voice work, a little bit like what Margot Robbie's potentially, that hasn't totally been confirmed yet, but with the Harley Quinn series for the DC streaming service, I would say that would be brilliant. I think that would be a brilliant, fun little side idea, and it would help animation, especially 2D animation, which really could use the help. But by making these shows live action, Feige is violating his own number one rule, and that's keep it simple. For instance, how many layers is Marvel going to have now, right? They've got the movies, they've got the pocket MCU universe that Amy Pascal is defiantly building over at Sony. They then have the MCU streaming shows, then Marvel Netflix, and then a bunch of shows in the wind, like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Cloak and Dagger, and Runaways, which are connected. Officially, all of them are supposed to be connected, as many of you like to remind me. But really, which ones are actually connected? I think obviously the ones that Feige runs will be connected, the movies, and I guess the Amy Pascal stuff begrudgingly, right? Because he wants Spider-Man, and the MCU streaming shows. But all the other stuff is run by Jeff Loeb under the Marvel Television banner, and it said that it will be staying there. So Kevin Feige, we've seen, he's king of his domain, and he deserves it. He's earned that kind of control. He's separate from all the rest of Marvel, and he's not going to want to play with Jeff Loeb or let Jeff Loeb play with his toys. Now, also but even within Feige's camp, once a big screen character goes to the small screen, can they conceivably go back into the movies, right? Without making the movie seem like less of a big deal? I mean, Coulson, he's coming back finally years later for Captain Marvel, but and also Sif, she went to the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., never came back. Peggy Carter didn't come back. So if I were an actor, I'd be very scared to go. I'd be like, I think this is a one-way trip. And I think that would be a correct assumption or suspicion, right? Now, also, where does this leave the Marvel Netflix shows, which again are said to unlikely to leave Netflix anytime soon? This is a demotion for them as well, pushing them even further away from the movies. One of you was like, I've had a recent exchange about this, and someone said, oh, they're connected. The Marvel Netflix TV shows reference the movies all the time, right? If only one side of a relationship believes that there's a relationship and is making an effort, that's not a real relationship. I've never seen the movies reference, certainly in a meaningful way, the Marvel Netflix shows. They're not on Kevin Feige's radar. So this, again, pushes them even further away. Then there's brand erosion. Right now, MCU fans get 3 movies a year, continuing a single story, which are all beautifully packaged publicity-wise. It's an easy, fun, simple commitment. But with these streaming shows, which will have to be important to the overall MCU story to be worth watching, if they're connected, right? Well, that's a much bigger commitment in terms of both time and money. And if audiences start to feel like they're missing part of the story anyway, like I see all the movies and I'm still not caught up, right? That feeling could start to come in and would be true, right? And they also get used to watching MCU stories on the smaller screen because let's be honest, what makes the MCU movies cinematic is their exclusivity to the big screen, not their artistry. I mean, they're just a shade away from television as it is. Also, the budget has differentiated them. But if these shows look good, then, it's just really the screen size and, again, that exclusivity factor, which would also, back to that point, make it harder for streaming characters to go back because it would diminish the exclusivity of the movies. But if this line starts to get blurred, why won't you just wait for MCU movies to hit the streaming service as well? I mean, you're already paying for it. It's just a little bit of extra months to wait, and you don't have to pay extra for the movies then. It's all included in your single subscription fee. Maybe you'd still go and see the movie once, but many of you go to see these movies multiple times, sometimes up to 10 times. Would you still do that if you knew it was going to come to your Disney streaming service, in just a matter of months? Particularly, again, if you were busy, also distracted watching an MCU streaming show. You're like, I could go see this MCU movie again, but I'll go watch this new fresh story instead. So that's going to bring the box office numbers down. Although maybe Disney feels they'll be making so much money on the streaming service, that would be okay. But think about it. How many of you already skipped Ant-Man and the Wasp? I know it was a number of you because of the box office. And how many of you are on the fence with Captain Marvel, which had, I think, the softest debut for a Marvel movie in quite some time, PR-wise, yesterday? With this streaming service, how many of you would just wait to watch those two movies until they became available again on the streaming service? Now, Kevin Feige borrows a lot from DC, as we've discussed, and to be fair, DC certainly borrows a lot from the MCU. But why on earth would Feige copy the DC business plan when his is working so well and DC's really is not? It's very puzzling to me. I feel this must be pressure from the Disney higher-ups, right? Who are just keen to get as many subscribers as possible for this streaming service, to have that money start rolling in. And even though streaming services aren't an a la carte business, let's give Disney the benefit of the doubt and say that they will try to advertise all these new shows individually. No other streaming service has been able to do this yet. Netflix certainly can't. I think even, it seems, I think even going onto the new DC Universe streaming site, they all have the same feel. They're like, you sift through all this and watch what you like. We just make sure there's enough for you to go through to feel that it's worth your monthly subscription fee. And that would be a shame to see that happen to these really wonderful Disney properties that, as I said, right now are for the most part extremely well packaged. And on that point, though, some of them aren't. We've been discussing lately that Disney just doesn't have the bandwidth to advertise all the content they have now. They have the Fox deal being finalized, right? So that's going to create more content, although there's some feeling that it might the Fox assets might be largely used to support the streaming service. But then the floodgate of all the streaming shows, and it's not just the MCU shows. You've got the Star Wars shows. You've got Disney's High School Musical. You've got Pixar stuff like Monsters and a Monsters Inc. show. I'm sure there's going to be a whole bunch of other stuff that's on the streaming service. That's just so much. Disney, I don't think any company could have the bandwidth to promote all of that to the degree that they do, certainly for Marvel, that they do now, right? The Marvel movies. And also, how about the media? How can the media possibly cover this? How can consumers possibly pay attention to all of this? I mean, especially with other quality content still coming from competitors. I mean, I think, Disney, of course, has a lot of people's most of people's time tied up right now, but there are just some shows that I think, like Game of Thrones, for instance, that people just aren't going to walk away from. So I think that these MCU shows then will seem even more adrift from the movies and could potentially weigh down again the whole Marvel, MCU brand. So what do you think? Share your thoughts down below, especially now that we've gone through this with such detail. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.